Welcome to the job site. We're here in South Lyon, Michigan on an Umbriano paver project to look at the 5 points of a paving system. Let's take a look at the first one, the base. Proper base construction begins with proper excavation. And when determining how deep you need to excavate for the project, you need to count for your base depth, your bedding layer depth, and your paver thickness. Those three added together will give you the total depth of excavation necessary, provided the soil conditions are good when you begin digging. Another critical component of excavation is your base extension. And what we mean by base extension is we mean the depth that the base is going to extend beyond where the edge of the paved area will be. Generally speaking, that width should be equal to the depth of your base. So in this case, we're going to have about a 6-inch base extension. That's going to allow for stability along that paver edge, as well as a nice platform for your edge restraint to be mounted to for overall durability of the project. Once the area has been excavated and all disturbed and loose subsoils have been removed, the subsoil should be compacted before installing your base material. It's important to compact the subsoil for 4 main reasons. 1, it increases the load-bearing capacity of the soil. 2, it prevents settlement and rutting over time. 3, it reduces seasonal movement from moisture change and freeze-thaw cycles. And 4, it helps ensure that movement during freeze-thaw cycles is uniform throughout the base. Geotextile filter fabric is highly recommended when installing over cohesive soils such as clays or silts. It's also highly recommended when installing over areas that are going to stay saturated or retain moisture for large portions of the year. To ensure proper drainage and optimum load-bearing capacity, be sure to use a quality base material, such as 3/4 crusher-run gravel, which is a mix of 3/4-inch stone and sand. Additionally, 3/4-inch clear stone can be used, which is 3/4-inch stone with no fines. However, when working with 3/4-inch clear stone, additional considerations must be taken into account, such as drainage, geotextiles become a must, and the aggregate still requires compaction prior to installing the bedding layer. Base material must be compacted in order to avoid settling of the material over time. This should be done using a vibratory plate compactor to compact the material to the desired Proctor density. Individual base lifts or layers should be installed in uniform thickness to help ensure uniform density. The thickness of the lifts and the total number of passes to accomplish full compaction depends on the weight and travel speed of the compactor. However, a good field indicator that full compaction has been reached is that your compactor will begin to bounce slightly as opposed to the regular vibration. Establishing the slope of your project can easily be done while leveling your final base lift. This is accomplished by raking and grading the base to string lines or a laser level to set the pitch from your high point to your low point. At this point, the entire base has been installed, it's been compacted in multiple lifts, and it's been pitched from the high end on that side to the low end on this side. We're just about ready to start screeding our bedding layer. One final check that's a good thing to do before you begin installing your bedding layer, to take a pipe like one of your screed bars and just gently roll it across the surface of your base. You'll be able to check for any low spots or high spots that are visible against that pipe. Just want to make sure that that's a pipe that's relatively new and straight, good condition. You can easily identify those spots, fill them in, give them one final compact on that location, and then you're ready to begin screeding the bedding layer. After the necessary base thickness has been installed and properly compacted, a level bedding course for the pavers must be prepared. The bedding course should be a 1-inch depth. Too much sand and the pavers will compact unevenly into the bedding course. Too little sand and the proper bedding and lockup of the pavers is not achieved. Coarse sand, also known as concrete sand, is the recommended bedding material because it provides the necessary drainage and structural characteristics. 1/8-inch clean chipstone can also be used and has the added benefit of being workable even while wet. One of the easiest and most effective methods of installing your bedding course is screeding using 1-inch outside diameter pipes laid directly on your prepped and sloped base material. When using a sand bedding layer, screed pipe should be set so that a paver sitting on top of the pipe is 1/2 inch higher than the desired finished height of the paved surface. When using 1/8-inch chipstone, a paver should sit 1/4 inch higher than the desired finished height. After screed pipes have been set and leveled, Place bedding material between them and drag a board over the pipes to create a smooth bedding course. It's important that you only prepare as much area with the bedding course as you can lay pavers in that same day, or you may have to re-level the area due to unexpected rain or people or animals walking on the area. The final step in screeding your bedding layer is to remove the pipes and gently fill them in using sand and smoothing it with a trowel. Once you have completed screeding the area in which you will lay pavers in that day, you're ready to start laying pavers. Before opening the bundles and beginning paver installation, verify that the correct product, color, and quantity are on site. During installation, pavers should be pulled and installed from multiple bundles at one time to ensure that color variations are randomly mixed throughout the installation area. It's recommended that a minimum of 3 bundles are opened and installed simultaneously. It is also recommended whenever possible to work through the bundle in vertical sections as opposed to horizontal layers, as this will result in better blending of possible color variations from layer to layer within the product. Nearly every job installed with concrete pavers requires some cutting. Pavers are typically cut along the edge of the pavement, around planters or drainage inlets, or where there is a change of pattern. For the health and safety of everyone on site, it's highly recommended that you use a saw that's capable of cutting wet whenever cuts are needed to be made. This will reduce the amount of dust in the air and around the job site, while also prolonging the life of the cutting blade. When determining where to start on the project, keep in mind that where there is flexibility with the finished project dimensions, the amount of cutting can potentially be reduced by starting along a fixed edge, such as a building or a retaining wall, and working out from there. Project design and product selection can also aid in reducing the amount of cuts. For example, on this project, Umbriano 12x24 was selected, and it was laid in a running bond pattern, which resulted in a total of only 7 cuts for the finished project. Once you begin installing the pavers, be sure not to disturb the bedding layer. However, pavers can be walked on once they are laid over the bedding material. Be sure to slide pavers down against previously installed units. Never slide the pavers across the bedding layer. Be sure to use string lines or snap a chalk line directly onto the bedding course to maintain straight lines. Periodically adjust as needed to maintain proper alignment. During installation, pavers should be visually inspected for chips, cracks, imperfections, and proper color blending. Set pavers with imperfections aside and use these for cuts at a later time. When handling pavers, it's recommended that gloves be worn to protect your hands. Care should also be taken to protect pavers from damage, especially on the surface and the edges. A best practice is to use a filter fabric as a protective barrier over previously installed pavers as you continue to work. The final step of paver installation is compaction into the bedding layer. However, prior to completing this step, the 4th part of a 5-point paving system, the edge restraint, must be installed. We'll discuss edge restraints in detail in another segment. Paver compaction is very important for 2 reasons. First, it removes any slight height variations that you may have from paver surface to paver surface, resulting in a smoother overall finish to the project. Second, and more importantly, compaction drives sand up through the bottom of the joint, helping secure the individual pavers from movement. A paver roller compactor, or polyurethane pad connected to the bottom of a plate compactor, must be used to prevent scuffing or scratching of the paver surface during the compaction process. It's important that you do not put any type of sand in the joints or on the surface before paver compaction. This will prevent proper leveling and could result in scuffing and scratching. The surface must be free of all debris and sand prior to compacting. The easiest way to achieve this is to gently sweep with a blower prior to compaction. Run the compactor in parallel rows across the surface of the pavers, making sure you have compacted all pavers. Make 2 or 3 passes with the compactor running in different directions. The purpose of an edge restraint is to prevent horizontal movement along the perimeter of a paving system, maintaining the integrity of the entire system. Edge restraints are required on the entire perimeter, except for areas where the paving is going to meet up against a foundation, a planter, a step, or a retaining wall. The 2 preferred types of edge restraints are plastic edging that is installed with spikes and modified concrete edging that is installed with a trowel. Modified concrete edging has 2 distinct advantages over a traditional concrete edge. First is its ability to flex during freeze-thaw cycles while maintaining its strength and durability. And second, there are several modified concrete edge restraint options that allow for compaction immediately following installation. When it comes to the edge restraint, this step can be installed at various stages throughout a project. Some contractors will choose to install their edge restraint first and use it as a border when screeding their bedding layer. Other times it may make more sense to install the majority of the pavers and then install your edge restraint at the final edge of those pavers. Regardless of when you choose to install your edge restraint, there's two important considerations to keep in mind. The first is that your edge restraint must be installed prior to completing the final compaction of your pavers to set them into the bedding layer. The second part is when it comes to your bedding layer, it's important that you remove that and work your way down to the base material. We talked about base extension in a previous segment with base installation. This base is extending a good 6 to 8 inches beyond the finished edge of the paver, which is supporting the entire paving system and also allowing a firm foundation for these spikes to be nailed into to support this edge restraint. Without that base extension, this edge restraint would over time inevitably fail. After all edge restraints have been installed, you can complete the final step of paver installation, compacting to bed the pavers into the bedding course. Before installing your joining material, the entire project should be visually inspected to ensure any damaged pavers are replaced. This is also the final opportunity to ensure that color has been properly blended throughout the project. Pavers can be removed and blended using various mechanical and pneumatic lifting tools. The most common type of joining material is polymeric sand. Polymeric sand is a blend of sand and special additives that form a binding agent when exposed to water. As the sand particles fuse, the pavers are locked in place. Before beginning the installation, ensure that the paver surface, sides, and joints are dry. Moisture will prevent the sand from properly filling the full depth of the joint and can prematurely begin the activation process. When installing polymeric sand, it's important to follow all manufacturer's installation instructions. But generally speaking, many of the steps are the same. Begin by spreading polymeric sand evenly over the surface of the pavers. Sweep the polymeric sand across the surface and into all the joints using a large soft bristle push broom. Be sure to sweep or blow excess polymeric sand off the surface of the pavers. The next important step is to compact the entire paver surface with a rolling paver compactor or vibratory plate compactor with a polyurethane pad to consolidate the polymeric sand. Compaction to consolidate the sand within the joints is critical because as we can see on this site, the sand has settled within the joint anywhere from 30 to 50%. So it's critical to compact to get rid of any air pockets and drive that sand all the way down within that joint. Now that we've done that process, we're ready to sweep a second round of sand across the entire area of the paver and continue to move forward. One important note when sweeping your final layer of sand is in regards to the depth within your sand joint. The most common sand failure we see is a result of the sand being too high in that joint. As a general rule of thumb, you want your sand to be an 1/8 inch below the surface of the paver if you're dealing with a zero bevel square edge paver. If the paver has any type of chamfer or rounded edge on the top, you should be an 1/8 inch below where the edge of that paver begins to be straight vertical up and down. That way you can ensure your sand is the proper height and allow for proper water runoff with your pitch of your project. Prior to polymeric sand activation, it's recommended that you use a blower at low speed to clean the surface to ensure there's no dust, debris, or polymers left on the pavers. This will also help ensure that the joints are not overfilled with sand. Starting at the lowest area, shower the polymeric sand for approximately 30 seconds over an area of 30 square feet until you have covered the entire paver surface. Thanks for spending the time with us. We hope that you gained some insight into the installation of joining material. We'll see you next time.